Thank you for taking the time to joining us. Now, the focus, as you are aware of our presentation this morning, is on Turnitin, and we are going to present to you the way the Turnitin is utilized within UNISA and how it supports our endeavors in building academic integrity and avoiding plagiarism. So before you can start with a program such as Turnitin, which is referred to as an originality checker, you must have a clear understanding of UNISA's viewpoint on plagiarism and what plagiarism itself actually is. UNISA does not tolerate plagiarism. The university is very clear on this. There are various policies in play in this regard, as well as rules of conduct and procedures that speak to this specific item. Do understand that this is a serious matter. It can compromise not only yourself, but it compromises your supervisor as well as your fellow students in the institution. The policies and the student values are available online for you. They are regularly updated. So even if you've read them in the past, my advice would be that you refresh your memory and renew your knowledge on the content and the details in this regard from the website. Okay, so what is plagiarism? As I've mentioned, you do need a clear understanding of what plagiarism entails, what the full scope of it is, so that you do not plagiarize or perhaps inadvertently plagiarize in this regard. So apart from the UNISA policies and the details that you receive in there with examples as well, on the Turnitin side, we rely on the Merriam-Webster's online dictionary definition of what it means to plagiarize. So it is to steal and pass off the ideas or words of another as one's own. So this is the traditional one. This is the one where, you know, like in school, you would copy a friend's homework. That is in essence what that means. And this is the one that most of you might be familiar with. But it is also important to note that to use another's production without crediting the source, or to commit literary theft, or to present as new and original an idea or product derived from an existing source, those also form part of the scope as what is noted as plagiarism. Plagiarism is considered an act of fraud because it is a deceitful presentation of content of work. So the false representation of the origin of the work is what would be deemed as plagiarism. You can, of course, also consult the source plagiarism.org. They have very nice articles on that website that explain to you what plagiarism is, how to avoid it, and to be careful when you do write your work. This is an international site, so it may not contain the finer details as what would be required in your specific college. So please also consult your college on their expectations for your specific study. Then what is Turnitin and how does it fit into this picture? Turnitin is a teaching tool and it is used by UNISA to prevent plagiarism by checking for originality. Please understand, Turnitin is not a plagiarism checker. So don't call it a plagiarism checker because that is not what Turnitin does. Turnitin checks the origins or the possibility of non-originality within the content of the document. And I will explain this to you in detail in some of the later slides as well. At this point, I just need you to understand that Turnitin is not a plagiarism checker itself. It's not going to say, yes, your work is plagiarized, or no, it is not plagiarized. It will simply identify non-original content because we expect originality to be able to build academic integrity, hence the use of Turnitin. Before I continue, I also need to offer you a warning that when you submit your work for originality checking, make sure that you use your MyLife email address in any instance where you would access a platform to submit your work, and you need to submit your work yourself only within the formal UNISA submission space. I cannot stress this point enough. This is this warning here is to protect you and your work. There are many fraudsters out there that offer Turnitin services or so-called services, or they might offer to sell you a license. Please note that those would be illegal. You cannot use those and they would compromise you. Also, you do not ask a friend or family member to upload on your behalf, because in that instance, you will compromise both yourself and the friend or the colleague or family member that would submit. Only submit your work yourself by accessing the platform with your MyLife email address. In this way, we can protect your work and we can ensure that there are no undue conflicts, and we can also facilitate the option to reveal should anybody in future try to plagiarize from your work. Your Turnitin activation. As a registered UNISA M&D student, or you are automatically enrolled for UNISA Turnitin. Just be mindful of the fact, especially for those of you who are doing coursework master's degrees, that not all of the submissions in all modules necessarily require Turnitin originality reports. And then, of course, a reminder that you must have an active MyLife email address, as this is where we will email all of the information that you need for Turnitin. After your registrations, once registration has closed, we are currently in the process of updating and enrolling all new registrations into Turnitin, and we send out a welcome notice to you. This would go to your MyLife email and we will confirm the necessary details. You do not need to request Turnitin. Okay. There's also no cost for you as a student. This is done for you by UNISA. We purchase the necessary licenses for you and we allocate them to your specific profiles. There's also no program installation required whatsoever. Okay, so you are going to upload your files within the Turnitin UNISA formal space, and for that, to do that, we email you steps, quick access steps in your welcome notice. You will also receive a student guide as well as a list of frequently asked questions. That list it's a one-page. It's got 28 questions, but it covers 99% of the questions that you may have with regards to your Turnitin submissions. It details to you on what is required for your specific document and where you should go and how you should view your originality report. The student guide also, it's a very short guide with images and arrows indicating exactly what you need to click on the screen and where to go to access, for instance, your originality report. And then, of course, a continued reminder that you should only upload in the formal UNISA Turnitin space that we would advise you to do so. Okay, so what files are acceptable for Turnitin? Now, at UNISA, we use all-inclusive originality reports. So this means you should submit a complete document, just like you would submit it for your supervisor. We ask that you include a title page. Sorry, I just want to ask somebody's microphone is on. Thank you. Let us continue. Okay, a title page means that you need to have some form of heading for every submission that you upload to Turnitin. It doesn't have to be your formal title page. It can just be at the top of your document, your name, your student number, and what you are uploading, the date that you're uploading. So for instance, if you're uploading chapter 1, you can say this is chapter 1, this is your draft, or this is your final version that you are submitting. It makes for ease of reference, and it also helps to protect your submission, especially in cases where there might be an undue conflict. We can use that to verify your authorship within that document. Then, of course, you also have to include a bibliography or reference list, whichever is applicable in your field. And that serves as confirmation of the research content within your document. Okay. Again, it makes for ease of reference, and that is a valuable tool with which you can communicate with your supervisor to discuss the content and the findings within the work that you have prepared. And remember, your submissions are stored permanently within Turnitin. So make sure that when you upload, that you select the correct option and the correct document. On screen itself, when you enter the system will also give you 2 steps to double check that you have selected the correct option and that you are going to upload the correct version of your work to that specific option. Now, the file requirements are easy. Turnitin takes up to 100 megabytes. Your maximum paper length is 400 pages. If you exceed 400 pages, we advise that you contact the Turnitin team here at UNISA, and we will assist you with the submission. This may only happen at the end of your study when you have to upload the complete thesis or dissertation, and in such an instance, it's very important to be aware of the fact that a comprehensive report is needed for examination. You cannot divide or split up your document, so we will assist you to ensure that you have a comprehensive report. The file type that you're going to use, the best option is always to use Microsoft Word. Okay, that's what you upload to Turnitin. If need be, you can upload a PDF document as well, but note, not a scanned document. It's not going to accept a scanned document, but an electronically created PDF, such as a Word document which was saved as a PDF file, that would be acceptable. Then for file inclusions, as we've noted, that you need to have a title page as well as the bibliography or reference list, or if you are using footnotes in your work, that is perfectly fine. Then your declaration, your index, images, graphs, tables, all of that remain in your document. Okay, you do not need to take anything out. You leave it in there just the way that you would present it to your supervisor, or as it would go to an examiner for an evaluation or assessment of your specific words. And then, of course, because it is so important, another reminder that your submissions are stored permanently. Okay, so make sure that you upload chapter 1 under chapter 1, or your proposal under proposal. Don't upload chapter 5 under chapter 3. Okay, it's problematic, and it may compromise your final submission at the end of your study. The clause is open for the duration of your study, so even if you complete in 2-3 years, or perhaps in a 4th year, you would remain within that same clause. Hence, the options are available to you so that you have an opportunity to work on your own pace or according to the requirements of your supervisor. It doesn't mean that you have to upload in consequential order. If you're starting out with chapter 2, once you've done your proposal, that is perfectly fine. If you later do chapter 1, that is also fine. Just make sure that you upload to the correct option. Okay, so this is just in summary what I've just explained to you, and you have the choice that you can upload directly from the computer that you're working on, even if you plug in a memory stick, for instance. Should you be familiar with Dropbox or Google Drive, those options are also available to retrieve the document for submission on Turnitin. When Turnitin receives your document, it will email you a digital receipt after the successful upload, and that receipt will go to your MyLife email address. Now, the receipt is just a very short email. It consists of 3 or 4 lines, just confirming what you've uploaded and where it was uploaded. And then Turnitin starts processing the document and to compile the originality report. Now, when you've received that receipt, you can forward it simply to your supervisor to alert your supervisor that you've submitted your work to Turnitin, and within 24 hours, you and your supervisor may access the originality report, and you can discuss with your supervisor the findings in that report. On screen, when you are going to upload, this is an example image. For instance, where you're going to upload a proposal, you have a research proposals. So that is the space where you would upload your first draft of your proposal. You will see revision 1, that is where you can upload your first revision, and then you have a second revision option where you can upload the final version of your work. Now, how this functions is that when you've prepared your research proposal, if you have your draft proposal, you've discussed with your supervisor with what was expected, and you are ready for the review by the supervisor, you would submit to Turnitin, and the report is then generated. Now, this allows you and your supervisor to discuss the originality report. So the supervisor can make suggestions and can give you advice on what to improve, where you should elaborate, maybe if you need to change, or if you unintentionally overutilize quotations, for instance, that you may reduce that. You might get a referral to consult the library on developing your paraphrasing skills, for instance. Then you can go back to your original document once you've received this advice and guidance from your supervisor, and you can implement that in the original document. Then that new document that has been revised, you come back to Turnitin and you upload it under revision 1. Revision 1 will then generate a new report for your submission. And for those of you who might already stress, but isn't it going to pick up what I've already done in my draft proposal? No, it will not, provided that you use your MyLife email address and you've submitted the work yourself. Turnitin will honor your authorship, as it will recognize it, and it will not conflict with your draft. In other words, your revision will not appear as if you have plagiarized yourself. So do not worry about that. Now, the revised submission, the new report, once again, you can consult with your supervisor. If it is necessary to make further changes, of course, you have another opportunity in that regard before you upload the final version under revision 2 of your work. And then you can go forward to continue with your chapters or whichever next step is in line for you for your study. Okay. Now, when Turnitin receives your report document, it's going to generate a Turnitin originality report. And I trust that you've also already recognized that I refer to the report as an originality report or a report of non-originality. It is not called a plagiarism report. So please do not refer to Turnitin reports as plagiarism reports. The program does not accuse any person or any document of having plagiarized or of being plagiarized. Okay, I will talk to that in detail a bit later on. Now, Turnitin receives your document and it takes it to a database with absolutely millions and millions of other papers, publications, and websites. And it searches to pull a check for you on possible other sources that do match to the content of your work. That is how it arrives at an originality report. And this may take up to 24 hours. It usually does not take that long. It can take only a couple of hours, 2 hours, or perhaps 6 hours. But in some cases, for instance, if you submitted your complete dissertation or thesis, yes, that may take longer. It is all dependent on the network connections and the speed of the internet on when the report is ready. So the easiest thing for me to say is upload your work and then close Turnitin and go back the next day to check on your originality report. There are 4 categories in the database that we loosely describe as, first of all, periodicals. This refers to all types of publications. It would include textbooks, It would include conference papers, for instance. It would include journals, etc., within that specific repository. Then, of course, it's got an internet repository. Important to note here, the internet repository consists of current as well as archived internet sites. It also has a UNISA paper repository. This is papers from UNISA students. Please do not confuse this with the institutional repository of UNISA that is hosted by the library. Okay, that falls into the internet space. This refers to direct submissions at UNISA from students. Okay, and then the student paper repository itself, national and international submissions go into this repository. So all of the South African universities, African universities, and others on other continents worldwide submit into this specific space. So you can understand that this is quite an extensive database that it utilizes to compile the originality report. So what are the things that would be highlighted in your originality report? Okay, now it is going to highlight for you everything that is not original, meaning if it finds a match in the database, if Turnitin finds a match for a portion of your text, it means it's not original. So highlighted would be copy text from other sources. So yes, of course, if you copied a paragraph from, let's say, Wikipedia, that would be highlighted. But it would also highlight discipline-related terminology. Terminology that you learn to use in your research field that might be used by other researchers as well, that would be picked up on. Names and titles, okay, of course, that is necessary because they are not original to you. You have to use the original name or title of an institution or of an individual. Direct quotes would be picked up on. There might be items in your bibliography that would also be picked up, and citations. So it's very important to know that a proper analysis by the lecturer or the supervisor would identify if plagiarism is present in the document or not. But the program itself only identifies that which is not original, and that would be highlighted in the report for you. Now, the question would be, what is the actual difference between something which is not original or something that was plagiarized? And as always, I trust my colleague, Mr. Machila, would not mind if I use him as an example. Let's say he presents a paper at a conference and I am in the audience. Now, he makes a statement which I find very significant, and I wish to use it in my own work because it speaks also directly to the research that I am conducting. Yes, of course, I can take the statement made by Mr. Machila and I can use it in my own words. I can put it in my own work, apologies, and I can put it in inverted commas and I can credit him as the source. He made the statement. Now, that is not original because it's not my own words. Okay, so it wasn't my idea. I didn't make the statement, but I have acknowledged the source thereof, and I've indicated such in my document. So that is not original, but I didn't plagiarize. If I were to take the words, the statement made by my colleague in his presentation, I use it in my own work. I do not acknowledge him, and I pretend that this is part of my research and it is a statement that I am making. Again, Turnitin would also pick that up because that is not original. It's still not my own words. It's the words of my colleague. But in this instance, it's not original, and I have plagiarized because I have not credited him as the source. I've not acknowledged the fact that this is not my own. So that would be the difference between something which is not original and something which is plagiarized. And that's why we say Turnitin will pick up on that which is not original, but the report needs to be duly interpreted by your supervisor, and your supervisor would advise under which conditions you might use certain things, or would refer you to maybe focus more on paraphrasing or remind you on the proper techniques to reference or to cite another researcher in your work. So the percentage on the originality report, you've all heard of Turnitin percentages. Okay. What you might not have heard is that the percentage on a Turnitin originality report is a similarity index. It is not a plagiarism percentage. So please do not refer to that as a plagiarism percentage. It is a similarity index because it only tells us how much from the content of your document is not original. Remember, plagiarism is only identified through analysis, a proper analysis with a discussion with your supervisor, because there might be unintended plagiarism in your work, as you might not have realized a specific method that you followed or something that you might have used from the public domain could be seen as plagiarism. You did not plan to do so, you didn't act on intent, so there was no purpose to steal somebody else's work. But in the process of learning to do your research and to present in your own voice, you might accidentally step into that trap. Therefore, your supervisor can advise you in that regard. And this is an image of what your report looks like. Okay, so this is just the first paragraph. Of course, the slide is too small to show you a full report, but this gives you an indication of what you might see when you open your originality report. And in your student guide, as well as in the FAQ list, it is indicated on how you open the originality report and how you reveal the match overview, the column on the right-hand side. So to your left, you will see that there is text with highlighted portions. The highlighted portions are also numbered. In the little small blocks at the beginning of each match, there is a number. Now, those colors and numbers, they correspond with the individual matches in the column on the right-hand side. So, for instance, in my example here, my number 1 is red. And to the left, I can see there is text highlighted in red, also marked with a little number 1. That means that match is found in source number 1. And if I have a look on the right-hand side, my source number 1 is an internet source. And in this case, it is indeed from Wikipedia, because that is where I've copied this example from. So it picks it up there. If I would scroll through my whole document, I would find that there are a number of other instances throughout my document where there is red highlighted text marked with number 1. Now, all of them in red marked with number 1 mean that they match source number 1. And that is how we see the 17% on the right-hand side. So I want to first take you through the individual matches, because these are the ones that are most important to look at. So number 1 on the right-hand side, you can see in the red triangle, there is a 17%. That would mean from the content of my document on the left, all of the little number 1s put together amount to 17%. So 17% of the body of my document matches number 1. It's the same for number 2. Number 2, in my case here, it is highlighted in pink. This is also another internet source, the National Geographic website. And there we can see 14%, 1-4 in the pink triangle. So throughout the whole of my document, all of the matches marked with number 2 and highlighted in pink, they amount to 14%. Number 3 is purple, and it would go down the list. You may have 100 or a few hundred matches in your document. They will always start by the highest one, and they go down to the smallest one to less than 1. And our focus here is on these individual matches. Now, I realize that you are wondering, now, how do you read the percentages? What do you do with the percentages? In essence, there's nothing that you do with that percentage. That percentage is a guide for you. And we give you a margin that you can work with, that an individual match needs to be less than 5%. So obviously my number one of 17%, that is way above 5%. So I have to review the usage of that specific source to see if I did contravene any copyright or, plagiarized, even if it was incidentally, or if I'm overutilizing that specific source with quotes, for instance, throughout my document. I can address that. Number two, 14%. This is also way above the 5% guide. And even for this example, my number three, the 12%, this is above 5%. So that just gives you an indication, and it means the extent of use of a specific source or where it matches to in that space. You're not going to try to reduce the actual percentage. What you want to focus on is the content of your work, the originality of your work. If you've used a lot of quotations, for instance, you may wish to relook at the use of your quotations and rather paraphrase with the necessary acknowledgement, of course, to the sources. But because if you use too many quotations, that also becomes a concern, as you are the author of this document and one is expecting to hear your voice. That's what your supervisor is looking for. He's looking for his student's voice. That is what needs to be heard working through this specific submission. Because your supervisor can also go to the library and can also go to the internet and see what other people have written or stated with regards to this specific topic. But he's looking for your interpretation, your view, and how you integrate it with the research that you are doing in that specific field. Now, how does this relate to your similarity index? The similarity index for this specific example is 43%. You can see that encircled in blue. And again, the only thing that 43%, the similarity index, tells me is that 43% of the content of this document is not original. That is all that percentage tells me. And that is the reason why we do not have a cutoff percentage at UNISA. A cutoff percentage referred to as what should be the percentage which is acceptable and what is not. Sorry, I just needed to take a sip of water. So what is that 43% to you? It is merely a value to indicate the whole. So we don't work with a cutoff percentage because you could have a similarity index, let's say 10% or 12%, and your document is analyzed and it is found that there are portions of blatant plagiarism within your document, then that is going to be unacceptable. Even if it appears to be a very low similarity index, if plagiarism is found in the document, it is going to be unacceptable. Why? Because UNISA has a zero tolerance for plagiarism. But you could also have a document, let's say, with 20%, for example, or even 23%. And your document is analyzed and it is found that all of your matches are acknowledged, or they can be contributed to subject terminology, for instance, or to names or titles, and your supervisor finds that there is no plagiarism present within the document, then that percentage could be acceptable. So there is no percentage that we can say this is good or this is bad, because it depends on the analysis of the content of the originality tool. Because that enables a better communication and teaching between you and your supervisor. Now, this is just in summary to say that you have always to discuss the interpretation of your originality report with your lecturer or your supervisor. Make your own voice heard. Focus on delivering original content. Don't look at the percentages. Look at the work itself, at the document, and see how you can improve on that, what you are delivering within your specific submission. Don't try and go battle this on your own. Discuss with your supervisors. We give special training to our supervisors, hands-on, to help them so that they can give you the best guidance and advice in this specific regard. Okay, and of course, always refer to your student guides and your tutorial letters for additional advice that would be offered, or information that might be uploaded on the website by your supervisor to assist you in this regard. Okay. The acceptable percentages, as we have discussed, because UNISA does not tolerate plagiarism, there is no acceptable percentage. So that should never be your focus. The similarity index would only show you what is not original. So look at the work, go in, and if you are in doubt, make sure you have cited, paraphrase rather than use your quotes. Use your quotes sparingly and don't use very long quotes unless they are specifically required for that topic or in that field, or for a reference that you are using. So limit that. And then, of course, the final note for your individual matches, as a rule throughout UNISA, a single match has to be below 5%. Now, I realize that some of you might have already thought that 5% sounds like a very wide guideline to give for an individual match. Yes, that is a wide guideline, but we set it at 5% so that we would allow for subject terminology to accommodate names and titles that you would use, facts that you would use in your document. It even covers all of your small quotes that you would use within that specific scope of 5%. So that is a guide that you can use to see if you've overutilized on a specific source, that you can address that. But remember, it would always be to put in your voice into the work. Okay, for your content support, your library. Okay, so next to Turnitin, your personal librarian here at UNISA, or subject librarian, is your best friend that you can have for the duration of your study. The library pages have hundreds, if not thousands, of literature and sources on ethics, integrity, and referencing styles. If you are lost with the mountains of information, they speak to your personal librarian so that they can guide you and give you a direction on what to find in the LibGuides, for instance, so that you can improve on your academic writing. Learn to be a very good paraphraser, to express in your own words. Then, of course, again, on the plagiarism.org website, there is a very nice article on preventing plagiarism when writing. I know I've mentioned this earlier, but it's very easy to fall into the trap of plagiarism when you are starting out with research and when you are learning how to present that and how you are building from your proposal to your complete thesis or dissertation. Use these sources that are available and that are out there to help you. UNISA really has one of the best libraries in the world. I can assure you of that. Okay. For technical support, for my live emails, remember your account does need to be active. This is your formal communication with UNISA. And also, from the Turnitin side, if we liaise in any manner or communicate with you regarding Turnitin, we will only do so through the My Life email address, because your profiles are confidential and we need to verify them. And your My Life email is your verification. So if you have any concerns or problems with your MyLife email, you can write to mylifehelp@unisa.ac.za. Then, of course, for Turnitin, we advise that you first go to the list of frequently asked questions, because that would give you an immediate answer in most cases. Should you find on that list of questions that your specific question is not addressed, or you have a different question, then you can write to us at turnitin@unisa.ac.za. Always make sure that you type in the full email address. And remember, it's .ac.za. If you type .co.za, that email will not reach us. And we can advise you on the space where you submit how to view, how to access your originality reports, or if there's any other concern whatsoever. We can address that from the technical perspective. If it is academic content, we will refer you to your supervisor in that regard. In our office, we cannot assist you with academic questions like how do I paraphrase or what referencing technique I should use. Those should be addressed within your specific college space. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. I thank you very much for listening to me. And here with also a reminder to the email. As a UNISA student, we have our own UNISA Turnitin desk, and we always do our best to answer you as soon as possible and to put you in the correct direction here at UNISA on the use of Turnitin to support you in your studies.